All right, we are live back on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. Carter, how we doing?
Good, man. I'm doing well. Had a good weekend. Just relaxed, took it easy. Got some work done around the house and moving some stuff around and everything like that. So it was good, man. Good to get back out there, get back into the grind on Monday, and excited to. It's officially here, man. Week 0 is here. We got college football this Saturday. Florida State, Georgia Tech. We'll talk a little about it. But it's that time of year, man. I mean, I went out this afternoon after I finish up work. Sometimes I'll go to the pool and kind of work on the show notes and stuff like that by the pool. I was thinking I was going to do that, but I went outside. It was a little cloudy and it was a little chilly out there. I was like, all right, I'm gonna work in the house today. So it's fall's almost here. We're finishing up summer and it's football season, baby. So I'm jacked up. I'm ready to go. What about you? How was your weekend, Duke?
Weekend was good. Did a little work, getting ready, getting the garage ready, getting it around for optimal viewing. So we can watch multiple games in the garage. And also a little bit of a side note, I did get us a contact in South Bend. So
hell yeah.
For Louisville.
Okay.
If long as you want to come up, wow.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Let me look at that. I should be there. Let me see here.
September 28th.
September 28th. That
Yep.
I mean, I can make the trip up there. So anybody that wants to come hang out, hit us up. We'll be there September 28th, 3:30 kick. We'll be chilling at least around campus. I don't know. I'll work on getting some tickets, but if not, we'll just chill around campus and watch the game with some people and have a good time.
And maybe possibly live show if we can get all the equipment up there. So
definitely.
That's
awesome, man.
Make that little announcement, and then because we have a whole tailgate of people that will be up there, and my buddy's name is actually Bob Knight.
Oh, Bob Knight, nice.
So
the GOAT.
Yeah,
that's awesome, dude. No, that's really cool. No, it's exciting. I'm definitely wanted to get up there. So pumped we can make it up there for the Louisville game. Ties in perfectly to what we're going to preview today on the show. Talk a little bit about other things going around college football and more updates from camp and things like that. But going through, just doing what I do when I'm putting the show together and just looking through social media and stuff like that, I saw that CBS Sports released their top 10 college football best new uniforms for the 2024 season. And there's some interesting ones on there. I only grabbed one screenshot because I think it's the one that's the most relevant to what we talk about here, but running down the top 10 from 10 to 1 here, we have number 10, the Baylor Bears. Had you seen these uniforms before this post?
Well,
yeah. Let me just do this. I'll just hold on. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to show them all.
Oh, you got it all to show?
Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, let me see. It might look not as good as clean as I'd like, but I want everybody to be able to see what we're talking about here. So yeah, there's the Baylor Bears uniforms. What are your thoughts on those?
It doesn't really do much for me. It looks like very low grade Packer uniforms.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They gave me a very Packers-esque type of look, which is not what I think of when I think of Baylor. I think Baylor really looked good when they wore the black and, had like the black helmets and everything like that. So I know the dark green's close, but it didn't do much for me. But, whatever, they're clean. I like that they don't have a lot going on. The whites are kind of nice.
Yeah, I like the road unis as I would call them. The road's good. That's a lot of yellow.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 9, we got the Boise State Broncos. It doesn't give you a good picture of the helmet, but I think this helmet's sick. It's got the Bronco on the side over here. Overall, it's a pretty normal uniform, but the helmet's what I think is really cool.
Right. I think that's a good looking helmet.
Yeah. 8, we got the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State getting a little swaggy and making the top 10 here. I mean, I like it.
This is going to sound horrendous, but I like the black and white with the white helmet.
Yeah, so do I. I like it. I think it's really a real clean look. I think they did a great job. Number 7 is the one that I originally pulled, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I'll let you go first.
I don't hate this look.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the numbers weren't shiny.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that concerns me is that it doesn't say what helmet they're gonna wear.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping it's just the traditional gold helmet, but
if it's the traditional gold helmet, I guess I could get behind this.
I could see him wearing like a shinier gold helmet with it because of the numbers, but I'm hoping they don't do anything drastic to it. I got to be honest with you. I'm not the one to ask when it comes to Notre Dame uniforms because I fucking hate alternate uniforms for Notre Dame. Like,
okay, like it's as a whole because I don't like. It would be like Alabama changing their uniforms. Like I'm like if you do like a one-off or something like that to where like West Virginia is going to wear the coal mine helmet, which those uniforms look sick, or Iowa State. If you're going to wear an alternate like Ohio State's black jersey, or when they wore the chromes,
or the all gray,
it's got that uniform has to hit different in order for it to matter, in my opinion.
I just don't like, I mean, the Shamrock series, I haven't really liked most of the uniforms they've done with the Shamrock series. They always do something that's like out there and flashy, trying to be more like Oregon. It's like, dude, you're Notre Dame. Just stick to what works. You know what works. The green jerseys, I'm fine if they wear the green jerseys once every couple years or once a year, whatever they want to do. But ultimately, just stick with the blue and gold, man, and the white jerseys and the gold helmet. I mean,
well,
whatever. Overall, these aren't bad. I've seen much worse alternate uniforms from Notre Dame in the past, so I don't hate these, but I don't see I mean, I know they claim for recruiting and things like that. Kids like to get swagged out in the new like alternates and things like that, and it's like I get it, but I just like the traditional uniforms better, especially with a program like Notre Dame or Alabama.
Well, let's take it a step further. Let's be for real here. Do we need to get swagged out to play Army?
No,
because I believe that.
Yeah.
I agree. If you're gonna be a traditional program and change your uniforms like Ohio State, like Michigan, if you're gonna change your uniforms at all, you got to hit it out of the park, because if you don't hit it out of the park, you just end up with blah. And then whenever somebody sees your highlights, to the common person, like if they see that uniform, and they wear a different helmet, nobody's gonna know that's Notre Dame playing.
Right. Army. Well, and the other thing that programs usually do is they wear their alternates for big time games. Like you'll see Ohio State wear alternates against Penn State in a night matchup or something like that. Like you don't see them going out there against Akron in alternate uniforms.
Right. But
it just doesn't happen. Anyways, But then, number 6 on the list, we got the Miami Hurricanes. I looked at this for a long time. I know it's a little different, but like it looks like a pretty traditional uniform to me. I don't see a whole lot of difference.
Doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Number 5, Tennessee Volunteers. Now, these are hard. I like these a lot. I think these are sick.
I like these. I like these Tennessee alternate unis. I think Tennessee. Yeah, especially with the patch on the shoulder with the 3 stars for the state flag. I think that's a good look.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Number 4, you got Texas Tech. Doesn't do a whole lot for me. I mean, it looks fine, but I don't know. It's Texas Tech, so I don't really care that much.
But I don't know how much you can dress that color scheme up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they switched up with the red jerseys. They put Red Raiders on the front instead of Texas Tech and just different things like that. And I mean, the red with the different helmet that has like the red stripe and things like that looks cool. But then number 3, you got Ole Miss. I love the baby blue, man. I love the light blue look. I think these are great.
I Me personally, I prefer the white helmet. I think this is a great look, one of the best looks in college football. Um, Ole Miss, yeah, I mean, even their traditional look,
Yeah.
I like Ole Miss uniforms because it's not over the top. It's a good color scheme. Everything fits really well.
Yep. Number 2, Liberty. Did we just have to throw Liberty in because they were relevant last year and they're a group of 5 team? Like, their uniforms are fine, but
I do
like,
like the all white look.
yeah, I mean, it looks fine, but I feel like they just got thrown in there so that they could have like this hipster program in there. And then number 1, of course, is your Oregon Ducks, who have 7,000 different uniforms. Although this helmet is sweet.
I mean, the helmet's cool, but
Yeah.
it just, I don't know. I don't get excited for Oregon.
You got the helmet, and then you got like the Black Panther looking thing around the neck. Like, I mean, I think those are pretty cool. Those are pretty hard. They do a good job. But Oregon has 7,000 uniforms every year, so I don't even know what's new and what's not.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's nothing like you see a traditional school out there like Ole Miss wearing, the powder blue and white.
Yeah.
Just
Exactly. But yeah, so some cool uniforms coming your way this year. Obviously, week 0's here. Florida State, Georgia Tech kicking it off in Dublin, Ireland this weekend, Saturday, noon Eastern time. Brought me to kind of look at some of the matchups this year and some of the great games we're going to get. Obviously, everybody's probably seen the October 12th slate where you have just banger after banger. There's like 6 top 10 matchups that weekend. But I found this interesting, and I was looking just the top rivalries in this year in SEC football, and just kind of saw some really good matchups that I like a lot. And so let me throw that up here. Obviously, you're going to have your traditional ones like Oklahoma, Texas, and Alabama, Auburn are 1 and 2. Obviously, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Georgia, Florida. But I think one of the biggest games, and we'll get to the bottom in a minute, but this Alabama-Tennessee game really interests me. I think that one's going to be awesome.
And I believe it's at Tennessee this year.
Yeah, I believe it's at Neyland, yeah. Yeah, and then obviously Texas A&M's a big one. These are all big ones. That's why they're up here. I think the worst one on here is Tennessee versus Florida, because I don't think that one matters at all. Well, Georgia, Florida is going to be a blowout too. So anything with Florida.
A rivalry that I think should be on there that's not is I think A&M, LSU should be on there.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really good game.
But I don't think they play every year, though.
No, they don't. I don't know if they play this year. I know they played last year, or maybe even 2 years ago, and LSU went in there and got beat by like 20 points, even though A&M was like 4-7 and LSU was 9-2. I remember that. But then the biggest one, or the top matchup, I think, is the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Clark County PD. That's got to be the biggest rivalry of 2024.
Yeah, that is a tough look right there. I
mean, right now Clark County's got a big lead going into the season. I think they, hopefully they can maintain that lead and it doesn't get any bigger for Georgia's sake.
It's definitely not a good look. What we got rolling right now, it's tough stuff, man.
You know what they say, you need a couple criminals to win a national championship, and Georgia's got that on the roadways. At least they got some guys, reckless driving, things like that. I mean, hey, if that's what it takes to win back-to-back natties, I'm all for it. Just make sure as long as you're not killing people or Aaron Hernandez out there.
Yeah. Also, let's not forget Georgia is the winner of 39 in a row regular season games. So I think they've got something figured out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then a big, kind of a big story. It kind of went under the radar for a minute, and then people started talking about it more. But ESPN obviously went through and has another round of layoffs. They continue to fire people left and right because they can't figure out how to use on-screen talent to maintain their ratings. But they fired RG3, Robert Griffin III, and Sam Ponder. I believe it was late last week. Interesting timing as they get ready for NFL season and college football. RG3, obviously, analyst for both. Sam Ponder was the one that hosted
NFL
Sunday Countdown.
Yeah.
And so losing your host a week before the season starts or 2 weeks before the season starts isn't ideal. I believe a lot of the reason that it happened had to do with their stance on biological men participating in female sports. And so Disney went, the way Disney does and got rid of anybody that doesn't agree with their company line. But it did also bring up some interesting memories of RG3, because RG3 was kind of like Jameis Winston in that he was the gift that keeps on giving. Anytime he got in front of a camera, always had something to say, and came across this, which shows the top 5 lines by RG3 in his time at ESPN. And I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know if I can read these. This is just number 5. He hit that man so hard, I think he sneezed, burped, and farted at the same time. Like, what are we doing, RG3? And you know what we call that? Premature snapulation.
Yeah, Robert.
What, bro? Pause. Them lips is whiter than Tyrone Biggums. If you don't know who Tyrone Biggums is,
yikes.
Google it. And then the number 1. I mean, and what do you know, guys? It's an orgy in the end zone. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the Michigan quarterback situation is an interesting topic. Who knows if Orgy's even going to play?
Yeah, I don't know, but he was unhinged. He would just say whatever. But that's just a little bit about, what's going on kind of across social media, some things that have happened over the past week or so. And then obviously the AP released their preseason All-American list. We'll jump into kind of some of the names that are on that list. Ohio State leads all programs with 4 first-team All-Americans. And then I believe it is Georgia and Texas or Oregon with 3. And then there's a handful of teams with 2, including Notre Dame and LSU. But one person that I don't believe was on the first team, at least, that a lot of people have tabbed as an All-American early first-round draft pick is none other than Mr. Travis Hunter. So brought that up, and I just wondered, when you look at Travis Hunter, is he an All-American in your mind?
It depends upon how you look at it, because some people will say, yes, he's, no doubt, but on what side of the ball? Because if you look at his offensive numbers, I believe he only had 50-some catches for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. And he missed 3 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be an All-American if you're playing both sides of the ball, because you're probably not good enough at one side of the ball to be better than the best at that position. So I can tell you right now, he's not an All-American wide receiver. He's not going to be. He's not going to play enough snaps on offense. He's not going to get the ball enough. He's never going to be one of the 2 or 3 best wide receivers in the country. Now, I think he has an argument that he could be one of the 2 best corners in the country. The problem is you're going against the likes of Will Johnson, Denzel Burke, Benjamin Morrison, and those are bona fide top 10 picks at the corner position that are all playing every single down on defense. And even if he plays 70, 80, 90% of snaps on defense, at corner, you're not going to be an All-American based off tackles most of the time, because you're not making a lot of tackles. You're going to be an All-American based off of your efficiency grades, based off interceptions, pass breakups, things like that. Well, if you aren't on the field every time they throw the ball, you're going to miss opportunities to accumulate the stats you need to become an All-American. I think he might be one of the 3 best corners in the country. I just don't think he's going to play consistently enough if he continues to play both ways. At least
right.
That's my opinion on it.
I agree with you on that 100%. I think it's worth asking that question whenever you have, the likes of Will Johnson, Denzel Burke, and the secondary in college football right now is stacked. You also have Caleb Downs, which he plays safety, but there's not very many spots in the secondary to go around at All-American because there's only four that they
you got
give
2
out.
corners and 2 safeties. Yeah. And so, you just named 2 there in Will Johnson and Denzel Burke. You're going to add Benjamin Morrison, who's a consensus All-American. He was first team in a lot of the preseason All-Americans, and he's second team in the AP. So it just, I don't see how he cracks that top 2 when you got the likes of those guys. And I know there's a couple other corners in the mix as well across the country. So I just don't see that being. He might be like a second team All-American, third team All-American. He'll probably be all whatever conference they're in now, Big 12.
Yes, they are Big 12.
Yeah, but I don't see him. I don't see him being a first team All-American. I think you're going to get somebody. I think Will Johnson's going to be a first teamer, and I think Benjamin Morrison will be a first teamer, and then I think Denzel Burke will be a second teamer. In all likelihood, unless Denzel Burke comes out and has a stellar year, that's just how I see it playing out. But interesting topic, and obviously this is all preseason. It could all change. Somebody could get hurt. Somebody could have a breakout year. Whatever. But moving on, because we do have a game this Saturday. So I want to talk about it just briefly before we jump into kind of previewing the Louisville game and jumping into some Notre Dame topics. But this Saturday, first of all, how much of the game are you going to watch this Saturday of Florida State versus Georgia Tech?
Every snap.
Yep, exactly. I don't care at all. I'm excited to see Florida State. We broke down Florida State either a week ago or 2 weeks ago and talked about DJU and what he brings to the program and kind of what they have going on there. But it's going to be the very first game of college football, noon on Saturday from Dublin. But from Dublin, Ireland. And so right now you got Florida State. Obviously, we've talked about them. I think they're going to be a contender to win the ACC and get one of those first round buys in the playoffs. And then you got Georgia Tech, who Georgia Tech has a good quarterback who's mobile. But other than that, I don't think Georgia Tech's bringing a whole lot to the game. So I would be surprised if this is close, but I'm definitely going to watch every single snap. But I got right now spread is Florida State minus 11. You taking it?
I don't know if that 11's a lot of points. I think I would roll the other way. Being week 1, I would say give me the Yellow Jackets plus 11.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It's the first game of the year. You're breaking in a new quarterback into a new system. Obviously, he's a very experienced quarterback, but he's new to Florida State. And it's over in Dublin, Ireland. So the travel and everything, that just tends to lead to like a lower scoring game. So I would bet that it's closer than that. But I'm definitely taking the under 55.5. I'm thinking I think Florida State wins like 28-24 or something, or maybe even less than that, like 21-17 or something. But interesting matchup. Obviously, big game for Florida State to start off after going 13-0 and missing the playoff last year.
Right.
But let's jump into talking about the ACC and Florida State, Georgia Tech, and get into one of the I think kind of the underdog opponents. One of the games that I think could be a bit of a, not necessarily a trap game for Notre Dame, but a game that I think people aren't paying enough attention to. And that is September 28th, 3:30 p.m. in South Bend, Indiana. The Louisville Cardinals will be coming to town. And everybody knows how that game went last year. Notre Dame was playing in their 4th consecutive night game after playing Ohio State, USC, and Duke, I believe it was. Came in, played a night game in Louisville at Papa John's Stadium or whatever they call it now, because I don't think they call it Papa John's anymore because he's a racist or whatever. But went into Louisville and couldn't move the ball. Louisville's defense absolutely dominated Notre Dame last year. Really wasn't even a close game. I mean, it was a close game at times, but overall, they'll be coming back in, and Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish are going to be looking for a little bit of revenge. I think that really put a wrench into their season last year, and they're going to want to avenge that. Louisville is going to be coming in. They're 54th overall in the country in returning production. They're returning 66% of their production from last year. Majority of that is going to be on that defense. So 79% of the defense is returning, and that's big because, like I said, their defense gave Notre Dame fits last year. Obviously, we're breaking in a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, new system. So hopefully Denbrock has those guys coached up, ready to go, and they don't struggle as much against that defense. On offense, Louisville is only returning 53% of their production, which was a middle-of-the-pack offense last year. They lost their kind of two-headed running backs in Jawar Jordan and Isaac Guerendo. Both of those, I mean, they combined for almost 2,000 yards last year. Both those guys left. However, they did bring in the On3's number 1 ranked portal class. So they brought in a lot of guys like Trammell Logan from USF, Jaleel Skinner from Miami, a bunch of safety from Tennessee, a couple other guys that are going to be key contributors to this team. And when you look at it, I think that this Louisville team is going to be sneaky. I think they got an opportunity to be one of the top 5 teams in the ACC. I think you're going to be looking at Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and then maybe Louisville. And not necessarily in that order. But I think that's going to be a big test for Notre Dame. Obviously, they're going to start the year with a test at Texas A&M that we've talked about at length, and we'll talk about again next week before on our later in the week show as we prepare for the game Saturday. But after that game against A&M, they got a couple weeks to kind of fine-tune some things, and then you're going to be looking at that September 28th matchup with Louisville as really a make-or-break moment for this team. No matter what they do week 1, if they go out week 1 and they lose to A&M, right? They go out, they lose a close one to A&M. They still have the rest of the year to make up for that and make the playoff and achieve some of the goals that they set out to achieve. But this Louisville game is going to be the first one that really puts the bullseye on their back, that gives somebody that's going to come in with a similar level of skill set. And I think Notre Dame's going to be tested early in that game. And it'll really come down to, when I look at it, the main concern for me is the line of scrimmage. I think Notre Dame's offensive line by then hopefully will be ironed out and be cohesive. The Louisville defensive line is very experienced and very talented. So that's the only thing that concerns me. I think as far as the skill positions on defense, Notre Dame's going to match up excellently from linebacker, corner, safety. On offense, Notre Dame, if they can control that line of scrimmage, they'll be able to run the ball. And I think Riley Leonard will have success in the passing game. But it's just going to come down to, can Notre Dame's offensive line contain and control Louisville's defensive line, which they weren't able to do a year ago, and that's part of the reason that they lost that game last year. But just my thoughts on it, I think Louisville is going to be an underrated team, and they're going to be coming into Notre Dame looking to do exactly what they did last year and kind of spoil Notre Dame's potential playoff run.
Sorry about that. The UPS guy showed up.
Oh, no, you're good.
Louisville's returning production is going to be interesting on how that fits. And, you know, like you had mentioned earlier, you know, Notre Dame rolling out all these new aspects to the program this year is a big deal. And also, well, I got everybody here. If you could come on over to YouTube and hit the like and subscribe button and help us grow the show as well, because that would help us out. We got 20 people watching. If you can come over from Twitter and hit the like and subscribe and help us get the algorithm going.
And feel free to comment and let us know what you're thinking about either Louisville game or really any games. I can sit here and talk any college football that you want or even NFL. But yeah, just let us know what you're thinking. If you think Louisville is actually going to be a test, or if you think Louisville is kind of going to be middle of the road and whatnot. My prediction for the game, a way too early prediction. I haven't seen obviously either team play a game yet. But I'm going Notre Dame's going to win by a touchdown. 28-21 is what I have right now. I think Notre Dame's going to win majority of their games close. I don't see the offense putting up a ton of points against some of the better defenses they play, but I think Notre Dame's defense is so good that they're going to hold opposing offenses to a low number most of the time. So I think that's the way that one probably shakes out. The one thing that they are concerned about, and kind of Mike Denbrock and Al Golden talked about it when they talked about the Texas A&M environment and it being kind of a hornet's nest, is right now Notre Dame's looking at probably having to break in and play some young offensive linemen like an Antoine Knapp or Sam Pendleton, who are both a freshman and a sophomore offensive lineman that are going to be looking at filling the roles of Joe Alt, who obviously left for the NFL, and then the tackle Charles. I can't remember how to say his last name, but Charles, who tore his pec, he's out for the year. There are going to be some young offensive linemen that are getting in the mix early in the season. And so when you have young offensive linemen that weren't expected to be a starter right away, that get kind of thrust into that position, that can lead to some communication issues, some missed assignments and things like that. And when you're playing a defensive line like a Texas A&M or a Louisville early in the year, that could cause problems for your offense. So I think that's the one thing that I really pay attention to early in the season is how is that offensive line holding up? Are they getting the right calls? Are they making the right checks? Are they identifying the proper blitzes? Are they sticking to their assignments? Are they doing what they need to do when there's pressure coming off the left edge? Are they sliding the protection that way and letting the running back pick up the backside edge rusher? Or what are they doing? And so that's really what I'm going to be focusing on, and that's what I think is going to give Notre Dame the biggest issues early in the season is that line of scrimmage and that offensive line play that we've talked all offseason about being a question mark, and now with injuries, it's even bigger.
Yes, and the Jagasaw injury, you just can't let one thing kill you.
No, and they have talented linemen behind him. It's just they're young, and they weren't expected to play as big of a role as they're going to have to now. And so, I mean, that can go one of two ways. You can get somebody like Paris Johnson Jr. that steps in and becomes an All-American after starting at a young age, or you can get somebody that doesn't step up right away and he's actually a big liability for your offense. We don't know how these kids are going to respond. I'm hopeful that you've done a good job in recruiting, identifying talent, and identifying the type of person that can handle the pressure and that can go in there and be a contributing offensive lineman for you at a freshman or sophomore age. But if not, that's going to be an issue all year.
100%. The offensive line cannot look like a turnstile at the old Six Flags. That is
No.
that is a big thing. And for the Notre Dame fans out there that are watching this, Texas A&M, their defensive line is for real. They probably have 3 guys that are going to play in the NFL on that D line.
Yeah, absolutely. That defensive line is no joke. So it'll be, I mean, that first week is going to show us a lot of what we want to see, because it's going to be kind of Notre Dame's weakness is probably their offensive line right now, and Texas A&M's strength is their defensive line. So we're going to see their strength versus what many people consider Notre Dame's biggest weakness. And so we'll see how they hold up in that game. I think that they have some really talented guys on the offensive line that can do a good job. It's just going to be a matter of how do these young guys respond, especially in an environment like Kyle Field.
No doubt. And also coming up this week, this is another side note. We got pretty big games on Thursday and Friday of next week as well. So
nice. Absolutely. We'll be here to break them down and talk about them all next week. give you a little bit of update from camp here. It's probably going to be a little bit shorter show tonight. We're getting geared up and ready for the season here, but Notre Dame released their captains for this year, which is always fun to see who the players and coaches and who everybody thinks are the leaders of that team. I don't think it comes as any surprise to me. You'll have to let me know there. So they listed 5 captains. I was not shocked by this, but it does tell you a little bit about how the roster is set up right now, that 4 of the 5 captains are on defense. And so your captains are Jack Kaiser, who's a linebacker, Riley Leonard, quarterback, Riley Mills, defense tackle, Benjamin Morrison, corner, and Xavier Watts, safety. I don't think it's a bad thing that majority, 4 out of the 5, are defensive players. I think that just tells you where the defense is at in their progression under Marcus Freeman and where the offense is. Because you don't have a single player as a captain for this team that was on Notre Dame's roster last year on the offensive side of the ball. Riley Leonard is a transfer quarterback. I'm sure he's a great leader. He came in. He probably commands the huddle. He commands the locker room. I have no problem with him being a captain. However, how is there no other offensive player that's been in the program for at least a year that has stepped up to become a leader of this team? There should be a running back. There should be a tight end. Mitchell Evans. Why is Mitchell Evans not a captain of this team? He's been around. He's a second-team All-American according to the AP poll. Why is he not a captain? Or one of the junior offensive linemen who's been here, who was under Joe Alt, who was, worked in the huddle with Joe Alt. Why is that not a captain? When you look at programs across the country, typically there's more veteran leadership on offense that is represented in the captain's room. You look at Ohio State, they have 4 captains. It's Travion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, Cody Simon, and Jack Sawyer.
Which I don't disagree with those captains at Ohio State.
Not at all, but what do they all have in common?
They've all been there.
They aren't transfers. They've all been there. You don't see Will Howard, who's a transfer quarterback. You don't see Caleb Down, who's a transfer safety. You don't see Quinshon Judkins, who's a transfer running back. I'm not saying transfers can't be leaders on your team. I'm just saying the fact that the only offensive captain is a transfer quarterback that came in 6 months ago, that's a little alarming. Why are there not more leaders on the offensive side? Now, I think it's also a testament to how good the defense is, because those 4 that are captains for Notre Dame, Kaiser, Mills, Morrison, and Watts, they're dudes. And so the team respects the shit out of them, I'm sure. So I don't have a problem with that. But it was kind of alarming to me that why is there not more leadership on the offensive side of the ball? What is Notre Dame not doing to cultivate that type of culture, that there is somebody like a Travion Henderson or an Emeka Ibuka, who's an offensive skill player or even an offensive lineman that's been in the program for 3 years, that knows what the program's about, that knows what Marcus Freeman's about, that can go out there and be a captain and help lead this team?
Well, I'm not going to say I disagree, but when you've had no continuity on the offensive side of the ball, you're looking at your 3rd offensive coordinator in Marcus Freeman's tenure. Mm-hmm. They can't build no continuity. You were stuck with Tommy Rees, then you went and got Gerald Parker, which I don't think is a bad coach. A lot of Notre Dame fans think he's, awful. I don't think you get a head coaching job in the Sun Belt based off of nothing. And the offensive numbers are skewed because you play a couple of bad teams and it inflates the numbers a little bit. But Notre Dame fans that want to pile on Parker and you're going to give Dimbrock some slack is totally unfair. So you're looking at your 3rd offensive coordinator. You're looking at your 2nd wide receivers coach, which you have botched that from the beginning. Let's be real. Whether you hate Mike Brown, love Mike Brown, it's really, I hate to give the guy a pass a little bit, but you fired a guy mid-season that was in the midst of recruiting. In the recruiting offseason, you fired him in there and you bring in a new guy that nobody knows. So what the hell are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I think continuity of the offensive staff obviously plays a role. However, being around college football programs as much as I have in my life, sometimes there's just guys that are leaders and they're dudes, and no matter what, the team is going to respect them. Like a guy like, if I go down to like Florida, a guy like David Nelson was somebody that it didn't matter if they switched coordinators every year. He wasn't the flashiest player. He wasn't Percy Harvin. He wasn't out there making or anything, but he was a leader in that locker room because he did it. He showed up every day. He did his job. He worked hard and he held people accountable. If you don't have a leader like that on offense, and I'm not saying Riley Leonard's not, I'm saying I don't understand why there's not somebody else that's already been here established in the program that is in that same position. Because you need more than just your quarterback as a leader on offense. But that's just my thoughts. And again, it's probably putting way too much stock into the named captains for a team. Like I understand that that's an honor and players take it very seriously. But at the same time, just because you're not named a captain doesn't mean you can't be a leader in the locker room. So I'm not saying that there aren't guys that are leaders in the locker room on the offensive side of the ball other than Riley Leonard. I just find it interesting that you would name 5 captains, have 4 of them be defense, and the 5th one, the offensive one, is a transfer quarterback. To me, that just doesn't scream strong offensive culture. Now, I could be wrong. That's just how it looks, the optics of it.
Yes, 100%. And also, you brought up some of those old Gator teams, and the only thing I could think of was somebody told a story about old Ronnie Wilson one time.
I'm sure.
So
I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, and when you look at that, like if I go back to like Florida and when like that viral clip of Tim Tebow running over the defense in the locker room, yelling at them, 30 minutes for the rest of your lives, 30 minutes for the rest of your lives, all that stuff. Like that's Tim Tebow. I get it. And he was a great leader. But what they don't show you is when he walked away, the actual leaders of that defense going, yo, that's just Tebow. Listen, let's go out there. We got to fucking do our job. And they start to actually talk about what they're going to do. And it's like, yeah, Tebow was real good at that, bringing that energy. But there were other guys in that locker room that could take Tebow's energy and be like, all right, guys, fuck. Like, yeah, we know it's Tebow. He's going to talk some shit. He's going to say that stuff. But now we need to fucking actually focus. And here's what we need to do. And so it's not about like JT Barrett was one of the best leaders I've ever seen in a locker room. And I don't know if I ever saw him really yell. Like,
Speaking of Buckeye leaders, Curtis Grant. Shout out Curtis Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you don't have to be a rah-rah guy that's up there screaming and yelling and making speeches and stuff like that. There's different ways to lead. And so maybe there's somebody else on the offensive side of the ball that's leading in a more silent way. And maybe that's why they didn't select him as a captain, even though I think I don't think Travion Henderson or Emeka Buka are necessarily very vocal leaders. I think Emeka is probably a little more vocal than Trey, but either way, like it's not about yelling at people or getting people fired up. I mean, that can be part of it, but it's about leading by example and people respecting you because of how you carry yourself in the locker room and how you go about your business. It's about being a pro. Like you're not a professional athlete yet, kind of, but if you carry yourself like a pro, everybody's going to respect you.
100%. A lot of times, people want to talk about, you got to be a vocal leader. No, there's times that, you'll get somebody that is a leader without even saying anything. And then there's times, Mark Messier is a good example of this. Whenever it comes to captains and leaderships, he won the Stanley Cup with the Rangers, New York Rangers way back when, probably close to almost 30 years ago. But whenever he went to any other team, they never won anything of substance. So I think sometimes in the media, they take somebody's leadership or somebody that's playing well and they dovetail that with this guy's a vocal leader because, behind the scenes, they'll say, audacious things the media will, the ESPN, to say the least, like the Urban Meyer daunted offense, Urban Meyer's daunted offense. And because, they say things like that and, like the Ed Warner high-powered offense.
Yeah, that was never a thing. Urban Meyer did have a good offense back in the day when he was actually coaching offense, but then he just found people that were really good at coaching offense and had them do it instead. And then he had Ed Warner do it, and he couldn't coach offense to save his life. But I digress.
You don't say, Carter. You don't say.
I digress. But yes, absolutely. And the other thing with a vocal leader and things like that is like sometimes those people aren't leaders. And the rest of the team is looking at them going, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, we don't respect you. You don't do things the right way. You're in here talking all this shit, but when you go out there on the field, you don't know your assignments. You're not in position. You don't know the audibles that we need to make. You don't know the checks. You don't know the coverages. And so like, it's not all about being vocal. You have to carry yourself the right way. And so and again, I'm not saying nobody else on the offense does. I'm just saying I find it interesting that nobody else was selected when there's 5 captains. I think 5 captains is too many anyways. But anyways, let's jump into this preseason All-Americans, talk a little bit Notre Dame All-Americans. And like I said, Ohio State leads the pack with 4 preseason first-team All-Americans, and then Georgia and actually Michigan are tied for second with 3 each, and then you have Notre Dame, Alabama, and LSU with 2, and those are the only programs with more than 1 first-team All-American in the preseason, obviously. So the 2 first-teamers for the Fighting Irish are Howard Cross III, the defensive tackle, and Xavier Watts, the safety. So I think, and then obviously you have Benjamin Morrison, the corner at second team, and Mitchell Evans, the tight end at second team.
Well, so, I think you could argue. I mean, depending on the year, I think this year, if they have really good years, I think Mitchell Evans and Benjamin Watts or Morrison could end up being first team All-Americans.
100%. Yeah, I think Benjamin Morrison has a really good opportunity to play his way into a first team All-American. I think he's one of the best corners in the country. I think Will Johnson is the other one. And then you got obviously Denzel Burke, Travis Hunter, and some of the other guys as well. But I think Benjamin Morrison is absolutely a lock as a second teamer, but could play into the first team. Mitchell Evans, if he has a good year, definitely could be in consideration. The problem with that is if you got some really legit tight ends out there, like Loveland up in Michigan and Georgia's tight end, Baby Bowers, and everything like that. But I think Mitchell Evans is definitely could play his way into the first team conversation. But just to tie this together, obviously, so with the captains being revealed in the preseason All-Americans, I noticed Xavier Watts, first team preseason All-American. Obviously, everybody knows who he is and knows the type of player he is. But the fact that he's also one of the captains, that tells me a lot about a player, because not only is he an exceptional football player, but he's a leader in the locker room too, which I love. And so Benjamin Morrison, same thing. He's a captain and a second team preseason All-American. Love that. Howard Cross, obviously first team All-American, excellent defensive tackle. I do think it's interesting that the other defensive tackle, Riley Mills, was elected captain over him, but probably just different personalities and things like that. But they have 2 exceptional defensive tackles, a great secondary, clearly. Like I said, I would like to see Mitchell Evans be a captain. I think that would have been, for me, I would have rather seen that. But, if that's not the case, then that's fine. But overall, though, I mean, to be one of the 6 teams with multiple first-team All-Americans in the preseason, that's good company to be with. You're talking about you're going to be with Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, LSU, and Bama. Those are 5 of the best programs in college football. So you're putting yourself in the conversation with some of the best programs in college football based off of talent that you have. And that's where you want to be. So I like that. Other than that, man, I mean, we'll get into some recruiting here real quick, but not a whole lot going on the recruiting trail. Obviously, still talking about the 2026 recruits and things like that. No movement from Deuce Knight, which is good news. No news is good news. Every time I come on here and say nothing's happened, be happy. But the one thing that I found interesting, and this isn't Notre Dame specific, I want to get into just so obviously the top offensive lineman in the country, David Sanders, committed on Saturday, and he committed to Tennessee. And I live in Columbus, Ohio, so I heard all about this all weekend long, to the point of exhaustion. But Ohio State fans are beside themselves because David Sanders committed to Tennessee. I mean, the amount of people that want Justin Fry fired because of this is just absolutely unfathomable. But I don't think Ohio State fans, and this is Notre Dame fans, anybody, like you get these names in your head. If you look at David Sanders' recruiting, Ohio State wasn't even a contender until recently. Like when he was being recruited, Ohio State wasn't really high on the list until the last 6 months. And so when that happens, it's really hard to land a kid like that. On top of that, he's not from Ohio. He wants to stay in the South and play in the South. Tennessee allegedly offered him $1.4 million, a house for his parents, and a suite at every game. Not that Ohio State can't match that, but why would you? It's a 5-star offensive tackle that I don't know if you know how offensive line recruiting works, but that's one of the biggest miss percentages in all of recruiting is offensive line because it's so hard to evaluate and scout at that young of an age.
And the other caveat too is I talked to a former tackle about this at Ohio State, and he gave me a very, very good statistic. He said if you look at guys that travel 5 hours from home, all 4 and 5-star offensive linemen stay 65% of them stay within 5 hours of home. The big fat dudes like to be close to mama, and
that's an interesting statistic. I don't know if that's a correlation based off causation or what, but I mean that's an interesting statistic. But on top of that, and the thing that I would tell, and this can go for Notre Dame recruiting, anything. I don't get really into this star chasing stuff. Like I think it's cool when you get a big time recruit who like a Deuce Knight or Dallas Golden or somebody like that's awesome. That's really good for your program, right? And it also picks up steam in recruiting, helps you recruit better players around them. However, if I was gonna miss on a 5-star recruit, the first position I would choose to miss at is offensive line. Because if you look at historically the offensive linemen that become top 10 picks, that become first rounders, that become NFL all pros, it's not always 4 and 5-star recruits. Like Joe Alt was a 3-star recruit, I believe.
Yeah. Whenever it comes to I'm trying to pull up some numbers here to back this argument up. A lot of the offensive linemen like DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson, they weren't the big high name guys coming out. Like Carson,
I believe Paris Johnson Jr. was, but I think he's one of the few.
But he was from Cincinnati, though, so
yeah. So he was from Ohio, but he was like the number 1 tackle in the country or something. But yeah, he's one of the few examples of a big time offensive tackle that translates to the NFL and becomes what he's supposed to be. But when you look at Ohio State, Notre Dame, even like when Notre Dame's historically great offensive linemen like Joe Alt, Zach Martin, those guys. I don't think any of them were 5 stars. Majority of them are 3 and 4 stars that get developed. You look at Michigan's offensive line for the past 2 years, which is won offensive line of the year both years, I believe, or at least one of the years, wasn't littered with 5-star linemen. Like if you have a person who's good at evaluating young offensive linemen and developing them, I'll take a 3-star all day because I'll develop them into a first-round draft pick or a second-round draft pick. I mean, Billy Price, not a high level recruit. Taylor Decker, not a high recruit. The list goes on and on.
But
so what and specifically with offensive line, I think the recruiting is obviously paramount in all positions and everything with college football. But with offensive line recruiting, I'm not going to fire somebody because they didn't land enough 5 stars. I want to see what you put out there on the field because you're the one position group that has 5 guys on the field at all time that have to work together every single play. And so if you can develop a unit that can go out there and be one of the best units in college football, I don't care if the average star rating is a 3. Just go out there and block. Just do your job and be good at it. Be a top 5 offensive line in the country. And I don't care what the rankings were. And so like with Justin Fry in Columbus this year, if he goes out there and he puts an offensive line together that's one of the top 10 offensive lines in college football, his job should not be in question. I don't care what anybody else says about recruiting. If he consistently can go put out a top 20, top 10 offensive line, who gives a fuck who he's recruiting?
Well, look at what he did with Josh Fryer. Josh Fryer's a 3-star from Beech Grove, Indiana. The Ohio State and these guys, they've been having success getting these athletic, bigger guys, putting some weight on them, being in Coach Mick's program. The success and the hit rate is there. I just think you're out there when you're out there chasing stars, it doesn't do anything for you. And let's think back about this. Kalen Proctor was probably one of the top 10 offensive line recruits in the last 15 years. Touted coming out, and he started day one at Alabama and got absolutely violated by Texas. Yes. So let's pump the brakes here. Now, did the kid get better? Yes, he got way better as the season progressed. But you got to remember, just because these big kids, they're dominating their area, and they're normally the biggest guy on the field. They're not going against a, Burton told me the story. He said his freshman year, who he went against? Will Smith.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in practice, yeah.
Yeah, Will Smith when he was on scout team. I mean, it's just you got to be able to translate it. And Kirk had a red shirt, and he ended up being an All-American.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, that's just what's going on in recruiting right now. We got some of the bigger fish that are finishing up their recruitment for the 2025, but most of it's 2026 stuff. And like I've said, I read some articles and I follow it briefly, but I don't get into 2026 recruiting in 2024.
Yeah, I'm not watching it too close. We said on this program when we first started in the spring, Notre Dame fans, you had the number 1 recruiting class. Where is it at now? Because I'm not trying to stir some discontent, but it is number 12 on 3. You're sitting below Texas A&M. So let's keep it a bean here. And you mean to tell me Dabo and the Cousins are also out recruiting you too? I thought we hired Marcus Freeman to be the recruiter to elevate the blue chip ratio because Mr. Family could not.
Absolutely. I mean, and we said it when Notre Dame was number 1 in the country that, okay, don't be too excited. That's not going to stick. Like I said, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, those programs are going to go out and load up on high-end talent to finish out their classes. It's exactly what they did. Ohio State, I believe Notre Dame at the time had 22 commitments, which is what I think they're still at right now. And Ohio State had 14, Georgia had 13. And I was like, guys, they're not going to finish that low. And so now Ohio State has 24, Georgia has 22, LSU 24, Bama 20. So they've all caught up, and it's just that's how it works. But if Notre Dame finishes with the top 15 class, which they should, then I think that's a good year. That's a good year of recruiting. It's not as good as we were expecting. It's not as good as we had hoped, but that's good. If they find a way to flip a kid or to get back into that conversation and finish top 10, I think that's what the expectation needs to be. I think Marcus Freeman needs to be pushing for a top 10 class every year, which he is right now. I mean, he's at number 12 and he's separated by 0.1 something. So it's a very close separation. But if he's pushing for a top 10 class, I think that's the expectation at Notre Dame, or at least it should be. I don't care that he doesn't have any 5 stars. Would I liked for him to have gotten a 5-star or 2? That'd be great. But, there's not many 5 stars out there. And most of them go to the programs like Ohio State, Georgia, Bama.
And also the other thing too, is when you start, being there on the first day of the draft, other kids see that and that resonates. So,
for sure. If they can get Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, Mitchell Evans, some of these defensive linemen, if they can get a couple of these defensive guys to go in the first round in April when it's the NFL draft, and let's say you have 4 defensive guys go in the first round, and maybe Riley Leonard gets picked up in the late first or something like that, and you're talking about having 5 or 6 first-round draft picks. Well, now that's a whole different recruiting pitch. Now you can talk to these people about, hey, we put 6 guys into the league in the first round. on night one, or we put 8 guys into the league in the first 2 rounds, or whatever it is. I mean, that's what Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, that's what they're able to hang their hat on is, yeah, dude, you could go make 1.4 million at Tennessee, or you can make 800,000 with us and be a first round draft pick. Your choice.
Yeah, and a lot of it is short sighted. And also, do you want to make the announcement about spaces after the Notre Dame games?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think starting week 1, obviously it'll be a little later in the night because it's a night game. But I think starting week 1, we're going to be doing a Twitter space after Notre Dame games, towards the end of them at least, and just to kind of cultivate a group and just talk about what we saw, talk about the game, see kind of what everybody's thoughts were, and we'll be doing that each week on Saturdays. In season, we're looking at doing live shows on evenings, probably Monday and Wednesday. And then we'll do the spaces on Saturday and might add a thing or two here or there, kind of impromptu. So if anybody has any suggestions or anything that they'd like to see, if it's like a call-in show, Q&A or anything like that, just shoot us a DM or comment on the video or whatever and let us know. But yeah, I'm always looking for new content suggestions. So yeah, the spaces will be fun. I'm excited to do that.
All right. With that being said, everybody that's watching on Twitter, come on over and give us a like on the YouTube side of things and help the algorithm and help us boost this show even higher. And like and comment and tell us where you're watching from. So with that, you got anything else, Carter?
No, man, no, nothing at all. I appreciate everybody tuning in on Twitter, on YouTube. Stay tuned. We're going to be continuing to do this. We're getting ramped up here. Obviously, week 0 this weekend is exciting. And then next week we go full into game week. So Monday, we're going to break down kind of what's gone on over the off season, talk about a little bit about what happened, in fall camp and where the team's at. And then Wednesday or Thursday when we go live, we'll do more of a breakdown of A&M and kind of what we see happening in that game and what the reports are, and give you a little bit of a preview. And we'll throw some betting stuff and things like that in there, make it more fun. But come on out, comment on the show, interact with us. If you have questions, if you want to tell us we're stupid, whatever it is, just comment on the show. Let us know, especially if we're live. We can interact with you that way. And just we're getting really excited, man. This is a fun time of year. This is a fun time of year, getting ready. College football is about to kick off. NFL's kicking off. I'm pumped up.
All right. With that being said, everybody, take care out there, and we will see you Wednesday night.